Well, I have to use my sixth sense of humor. First of all, you got to remember the famous song, "There's no fever like gold fever." And that'll spill over into silver in a way that people won't even dream of. Whereas this last move may take place in 3 years. You might silver go from 50 to 150 in 2.5 years. So that's a 300% move in a short amount of time.
Most people have no idea that silver is the #1 conductor of electricity on the planet. With the rise in demand for solar panels, electric vehicles, and data centers that power AI, silver is quickly becoming the most critical industrial metal of our generation, and possibly one of the most profitable investments that you can make over the next decade. And nobody is talking about it yet. That is, except for our guest on the channel today, David Morgan. David is considered to be one of the top 3 silver analysts in the entire world by billionaire Eric Sprott, and he's the founder and the voice behind the Morgan Report, which is a fantastic free newsletter on the market. David, it's an honor to have you back on the I Love Prosperity show. It's been a while.
Okay, thanks for having me. And I'll just push back on you a tiny bit. I don't push hard. But certainly I'm not the only one. It's not well recognized, as you so succinctly indicated. But, go back to the year 2000. I was almost a lone wolf. There were really 2 people in doing anything on the web about silver, and that was the late, great Ted Butler and myself. And now there are several commentators, personalities, analysts, you name it, that are talking silver quite frequently, actually. But I agree with you that the vast majority of people still haven't heard the silver story. We're in a bit of a larger echo chamber, I'll call it, from when it started in the year 2000 or thereabouts. And it's expanded somewhat. But again, for the third time, the word really needs to get out, because you cannot ever run a technological society that we have today without silver. It is the most critical element on the periodic chart. And the only thing that's superior to silver as far as humanity's place in today's modern society is energy, or the oil market. So silver would rank number 2 as far as having our lifestyle, beyond anything that you can name. So back to you.
Yeah. So look, I want to get right into it because a lot has changed since the last time you were on the channel. It was nearly 3 years ago. Silver was around $22 an ounce at the time. Today we're above $50 an ounce on silver. As I mentioned, we're seeing a massive rise in demand for all things electrics. Electric batteries, solar panels, 5G towers, every defense system, they all need silver, and they need a lot of it. Meanwhile, the supply is basically flatlining and dealer inventories are drained. I can tell you from a dealer perspective that nearly every single silver product last month for about a month had a 1 or 2 week delay on shipping. So I've got a question for you about supply coming up, but I want to start with what everybody wants to know, which is how much higher can silver actually go, and why?
Well, there's really 2 answers to that. One is, how high can it go? So could it go, not would it go, is infinity. Why? Because if you have a complete breakdown in the currency crisis, and the US dollar does what the Zimbabwe dollar did, or the Argentine peso, or so many in our book and other books, you will find currency crises throughout history where the essential value of the currency went to 0. So if you divide by 0, the numerator is infinity. Is that going to happen? No, it will not. It's highly doubtful. It's almost 100% guaranteed it won't go to infinity. However, the perception that the value of the dollar is losing purchasing power at such a rapid rate that the fear of it going to 0 is a strong possibility. And in that case, pick a number. So if you take the all-time high of 1980 that lasted in the minutes, and you adjust it for the CPI, you come out with $120 silver or thereabouts. If you use the metrics that used in 1980 for the CPI, not the new one, you will come out with about a $600 silver. So where do I think it'll go? One is the market knows more than anyone, one of my favorite sayings, and yet it's true. And it keeps us all humble because no matter how good you are, whatever you do, especially in the markets, sooner or later, the market will humble you by, you have the fundamentals right, but the technicals wrong. You have the technicals right, but the fundamentals wrong. I mean, things will take care of themselves and maybe be irrational, and maybe irrational for a long time, and make you look foolish or whatever. So my guess, I would say guess, I am on record, probably without a doubt, my opinion, I've never found this to be contrary, the first one to publish that silver would hit at least $100 US on this next bull market. And right now we're halfway there. So my minimum, starting in, I think, 2003, when I wrote Get the Skinny on Silver Investing, was $100 an ounce. And I still stick to that. Now, does that guarantee it's going to be triple digit? And the answer is no. We could peak at 77. We could peak at 82. I don't know. We could peak at 200. I don't think anyone knows at this point. The main point, I think, is silver's run to the maximum upside level has not, I'll repeat, not been accomplished yet.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that, as a physical dealer ourselves, we've been seeing delays in shipping or inventory that's just completely unavailable. And now this is investment grade product, not the raw material. So diving a little bit deeper, I'd like to get your take on supply and demand based on how now compares to what you've seen in previous bull runs that you have predicted.
Yeah, what's different now is we've done a flip-flop. What do I mean? So first of all, what is the silver market? And the silver market really is a derivatives market. The way the price of physical silver is determined is by a derivative known as a futures contract on the COMEX, the New York Futures Exchange. And it's not even an open outcry system anymore. Basically, it's an electronic platform where there's all kinds of bids and asks for a product known as a contract for silver. And the large contract is 5,000 ounces. The mini contract is 1,000 ounces. And that sets the price. Once that price is set, if you go into the physical reality and go to a dealer such as yourself, you will see that price and you will see another price. The other price is, what is a silver round? What is a 10-ounce silver bar? What's a kilo of silver? What does that product in the retail investment side physically cost? And the answer is it varies. The premium is at times fairly low and at times very high, and depending on the product, it can be excessive. Mm-hmm. So when you buy silver on the exchange and the price of silver is, let's for talking purposes, say $51 per ounce, the only way you can get silver for $51 per ounce is in the futures exchange. You can lock in a contract at 51 and have a commercial bars on the big contract mailed to you, to your house, to your office, to your bank, to your lawyer, wherever. And even there, it would cost you a little more than 51. You would have some storage fees from the time your check cleared to pay for the full contract. There's also some paperwork fee involved. And then in most cases, there's a shipping fee as well. So in that case, you might be looking, I'll just make up a number, 51.25 grams. But that's very close. But what are you getting? You're getting what you called raw silver. I call commercial bars. It's the same thing. Now that product is taken to a mint, melted down, usually a little copper added to it, and it's put through a process extruding and all this punched out to make a coin. Either a government minted coin, such as a silver eagle or a South African silver Kruger rand or kangaroo from Australia or whatever, or a privately minted medallion. I don't use the word coin because legally that means government press. They're the same thing, really, except one's government issued, one's privately issued, or a silver bar. And in those cases, a general market could be the $2 or $3 range, generally speaking. Now, I got to go a step further. As I said, a flip-flop. We have seen congestion or tightness, or some people call shortage, in the quote-unquote silver market several times in my lifetime, but it's been on the retail side. It's been for silver eagles or 100-ounce bars, or in some cases, any silver product at all. There was a time, I forget what year, where you could hardly get any silver at all in the retail side. Yet the wholesale side was plentiful. So the silver market, the derivatives market, was not short silver. It was the retail side that was. So they're not the same thing. They're separate markets. It's all silver, but one is 20% of the market and the other is 80% of the market. So 20% is retail product and 80% is industrial investment, large investment demand like the SLV, ETFs, that type of thing that use commercial bars for investment, jewelry demand, even silverware. This is the first time in my life that the short supply is on that side of the equation. The commercial bar inventory is so tight that there's arbitrage opportunities between London and New York and the SGE, the Shanghai Gold Exchange or the Shanghai Futures Exchange. That's the first time we've seen that happen again and again and again. And that's really bullish for silver bulls and really bearish for those that are short silver. Because what that means is the main part of the silver market is having tightness. And that is where the system is most vulnerable once it occurs. And it is occurring. So hopefully I explained that well, because people have been misled, in my opinion, when you hear some of the, let's say, commentators such as yourself. I'm not picking on you. I'm picking on the industry. And I don't think it's deliberate. But they give the impression that the silver market is the retail silver market. No, that's not. That's the smallest part of silver investment. Silver's main investment is industrial and commercial activity. And that's where you want to watch primarily to see if we've got a silver issue, problem, congestion or not. And we do. And again, that's extremely bullish.
So I keep hearing that solar demand alone, like what China and America need for their solar goals, could swallow up the entire global silver supply, not maybe on the retail side, but on the industrial side, like what you're talking about. One, is that even true? And two, if one industry needs almost all of the silver, what happens to everybody else? Do they fight over the supply, or do prices explode? Is this kind of why you see silver prices doubling from here? Or?
Well, Gabe, that's not quite true, but generally it's almost true. What do I mean? Looking at this chart, which I have to give credit for, it's from Matt Watson. He does independent analysis on all the metals, some of the exotic. He and I consider friends. We've had talks back and forth a few times. I actually had him on my mastermind once or twice. And this is his low case for silver demand. And you see the green bars there are solar. And this is from 2025 to 2050. So this is projecting out the next 25 years. Now, let me caution her. Whenever you go out 25 years for a commodity, you're going to make some errors. You're going to make some assumptions that are valid today that may not be valid 5 years from now or 10 years from now. However, what we know now, this is a very accurate look at silver going forward. So if you look at the black line, what you'll see is all mining activity from the year 2010 projected to 2050. And what it shows you is it's going slightly down to the right, meaning that the mining of silver is getting more and more difficult to obtain that 850 million ounces per year. It's going down, 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 down slightly. Now, if you use the red line, that is all silver. What is that? Well, mining that I just described and recycling, which is round numbers about 150 million ounces. So if you add the mining and the recycling, you get roughly 1 billion ounces per year going on for the next 25 years, again, tapering down somewhat. I think that's accurate from what we know so far. And they're not picking that 1 year to the next was a little less silver mining. We're looking over the last decade that silver mining has gone down. Grades have decreased, so the amount of material you have to move to get an ounce of silver out has increased. In other words, Instead of getting 17 ounces per ton, you're moving a ton and you're only getting 12 ounces. That's the idea. They vary mine to mine. Now, if you look above that red line, you see what we all know, that we have been in a deficit for the last few years. And that means that no, solar by itself won't eat up all of the demand, but industry alone does.
Mm-hmm.
Let me say that again. Industrial demand, according to Matt Watson, eats up the entire silver supply, roughly from 2025 going as far as you can see for the next 25 years. So what does that mean? Well, it means in theory you'll run out of silver. Now, will you really run out of silver? Well, that's a different question, because the law of supply and demand states that at a high enough price, more silver would be melted from silverware into usable form, or more mines will be discovered, or maybe a new technology will come along, or that type of thing. But barring all that, in the near future, you could see that we have to eat the above ground stockpile, which you've already started eating away the last 4 or 5 years. Estimates are anywhere from 800 million to even 1 billion ounces that have been sucked up out of the above ground supply for the last 4 or 5 years. And at that rate, you can see with the line going slightly off to the right and downward means less supply. Mm-hmm. And you see the projected industrial and investor demand, which are the gray bars at the top, demanding more and more and more and more every year we go forward. The one place I disagree with Matt, and your viewers may agree with me or not, is he shows the investment demand being a constant 200 million ounces a year. And I don't see it that way. I think as we get more and further into the currency crisis, there'll be more and more demand by retail and industry that can't live without it. Yeah. So you ask the question, and I'll feed it back to you. What happens if we start fighting over who gets that last bar of silver? Industry needs it, or they're out of business, and investors want it because the dollar's blowing up, or the lira, or the yuan, or whatever the currency is. I don't trust my currency. I trust silver. Gold's too expensive. I can't afford it. It's 5,000 the ounce, hypothetically. It's 4,400 so far, U.S. terms. Yep. I got to buy silver, or I'm going to die. In other words, my bank account is not going to have any purchasing power left. I've got to do something. Oh, I know what to do. I have to buy some silver. So we're in a situation where, by this chart, we are theoretically, again, in a place where we could, quote unquote, run out of silver. No, not really. But we will be in a position where both sides are fighting for that last bar of silver, as I said. Yeah. And that's a very, very interesting proposition. Well, if you have that information and you're a hedge fund, or you're a money manager, or you manage a pension, or you're a wealthy individual, or you're a family office, or you're someone with a brain, you can look at that and it's almost a no-lose situation.
Yeah, I mean, the supply and demand that you can see just on this chart alone, and I think that you're being, ultra conservative looking at the chart too. There's years like 2020 where it dropped significantly, and this chart doesn't really account for that. It kind of just flatlines it. And you can see that automotive and solar and everything eats up all of the supply. So I guess the next question that I'd have is, do you see a future where governments start interfering, where they could step in and take control if silver supply got too tight, where they could limit exports or buy up supply or take over mines or redirect supply towards strategic industries? What's your take on that?
Oh, it is. I do think it's possible. I definitely, those that know me well consider me a rather deep thinker. You can think of me whatever you want. But no, I have thought of that. And I do think it's a possibility. And here's my thinking on it, which, of course, I think outside the box, as you know, Gabe. If it's required to get silver for, let's say, government purposes, let's say military purposes, which is the most likely. Mm-hmm. It's back on the critical minerals list. It is a strategic metal. Why do you have a strategic supply of anything? Basically, it's for defense purposes. So in that case, I think the best way to go about capturing silver, obviously, is the easy to get to supply. Where's that? Well, that's in the SLV, the iShares Silver Trust, the PSOE, these big places that have silver that's basically readily available. Take it with compensation. But if you want to get it from the public, which really the public owns more silver in investment form than the banks do now. I think you have a chart on that I posted on Twitter we'll get to later on.
Yeah.
That silver, I would do it this way. And I think it's likely to happen if, someone in the WE, the vast intellectual Sahara, known as the Washington economic establishment that has destroyed our dollar, if that intellectual Sahara comes to their senses, they would say, it's a strategic metal, it's required, and here's what we're going to do. Anyone that produces 100 ounces of silver or more sells it for the spot price plus a $5 sweetener, and there's no tax involved, as long as you do it within the next 90 days. Mm-hmm. That would free up silver. People would say, okay, look, I don't have to pay capital gains. I'm getting a spiff for, the cost of transporting it or mailing it or taking it to the post office or however the government collects it. And, making a decision. It's your property. You have a decision to make whether you want to cash out or not. But I think that's the only way they're going to get it from the small investors.
You think
nationalizing the mines could help. I doubt that is likely. Why? Because of, the treaties between nation states, particularly those in Mexico, that mine a great deal of silver. Is China going to give silver to the United States for a war effort? Doubtful. So that's a secondary issue. I think there'd be enough legal wrangling around that where it'd be highly unlikely. You could probably do it within the U.S. Okay, U.S. nationalizing all the silver mines in the United States. Well, that's a spit in the ocean, excuse the slang. There's so little silver produced in the continental United States, it's not even worth counting on. So, yeah, you could take it, but if you got a 200 million ounce need per year and it's mining 20 million ounces per year, you're short a bit, like 180 million ounces. So could you nationalize other countries' mines? Oh, no, I doubt it. So I think the most likely would be what I outlined. Now, thinking like the government, they would probably, do something like in the 30s where you are, commanded to turn it in, and you might be fined if you don't, that type of thing. But I don't think that'll fly these days. People are too aware on the internet. The hard money, honest money crowd, they know who's who in this. They know who's right and wrong. They know how bad we've been manipulated by a monetary system that doesn't give a fig about them. Yep. They know that we basically have a hostile environment in all world governments. Very few, if any, have anything to do with the benefit or welfare of the people. They're a bunch of greedy SOBs at the top of the pyramid that are gathering everything they can for their own purposes in a control mechanism that wants to motivate us to do whatever they tell us to do with no pushback whatsoever. So I don't think you're going to get it from the hands of those that have this wisdom very easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. And I think that if they are incentivizing you to sell your silver, then you ought to just hold it if you can afford to, because that just means that it's about to go up. I want to jump into a recent tweet that you made, because I was honestly even a little bit confused in looking at this. You mentioned that the commercial float on silver is around 500 million ounces, even though the headline looks like the number is $1.6 billion or 1.6 billion ounces.
Yep.
Can you break down why the real available supply is so much smaller and what that means for the silver market?
Sure. So we'll go through it pretty quickly. So left to right, what you see on the left is basically government issued coins. And I already explained that a little bit previously. So those are your silver eagles, silver maples, Australian kangaroos, Austrian philharmonics. All those coins are added up about 1.1 billion ounces. And that's in very strong hands. Almost all of that is held by retail investors like you and I. The next one over is basically the same thing except privately minted. Those are called silver medallions. and those are your silver rounds, 1 ounce coins or medallions that are minted privately. A Santa Claus on them, or a buffalo, or a president, or you name it, the Rotary Club symbol. I mean, they have all kinds of, pressed out silver images, but it's still an ounce of silver. So they're equivalent to the left column. They're basically 1 ounce silver, but it's, again, private mint. So you add those two together, you've got about 2 billion ounces. And there's reportedly, the Silver Institute says there's 3.6 billion ounces of silver. All right, so I've broken it down into coins and medallions. Now on the right hand, which is the biggest number, is 1.6 billion ounces. So that's silver bars. Now the Silver Institute does not break it out into commercial bars, which is what the derivatives market is on, which you already explained, 1,000-ounce bars, and retail silver bars, which are 100-ounce bars, kilo bars, 10-ounce bars, and even 1-ounce wafers or 1-ounce bars. That number is around 300 million. So 1.6 minus 0.3 equals 1.3 million, right? Mm-hmm. You're with me so far. Now, that 1.3 commercial bar only total, about 700 million of that, maybe up to 800 million, is already accounted for in the silver ETPs or ETFs as they're better. So that silver is sitting in the PSLV, the SLV, and the other exchange traded products. So that's gone. That's accounted for. So now you got to take 1.3 minus 8. You do that, you come out with 500. So that's why we have about 500 million ounces that are in inventory, and I call the free float. And I question even if that's the number that's actually available, because you could have what's accounted for in the ETFs, and you could also have claims on some that's sitting in other warehouses that we really don't know because they're opaque. Opaque just means you can't see. It's like looking through glass darkly. It's smeared with Vaseline. You just see that there's light on the other side, but you don't see what's there. So also in the ETFs, I claim there's some, not everything is double counted. But if you read the prospectus and you see silver bars, commercial bars sitting in inventory in a COMEX warehouse or vault, that's counted as a COMEX inventory. But if you own the medallion, which means the paper claim of that, paid for, you own it. It's just a piece of paper that says you own those 5,000 ounces or 50,000 ounces or 5 million ounces or 50 million. And you have the medallion, you count that in your inventory. So you could, in theory or in reality, own, pick a number, 8 million ounces of silver that's counted in the COMEX inventory, but also counted in the ETF. So, and I do not know how much of that exists. I think it's probably a small number, but it can be double counted. So on that basis, I think the 500 million float is probably generous. It's probably tighter than that. So did I explain that well enough to you?
Yeah.
You got a good feel for that now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess my last question for you, because I don't want to take up too much of your time today, is when you look back at where we're at right now in the markets, in the metals industry, what do you think that we're going to say about silver 5 or 10 years from now in 2025? Was this the last good time to buy? Or what do you think we'll say about silver in 5 or 10 years from now?
Well, I have to use my sixth sense of humor. First of all, you got to remember the famous song, "There's no fever like gold fever." And that'll spill over into silver in a way that people won't even dream of, in my opinion. I think what you're going to see is that $50, the nominal high that we're now at or above, seems high. I mean, it took 50 years to get back there. And who wants to buy at an all-time high? But actually, that's probably one of the safest places to buy it. Now, are you going to get a 10-bagger that you got from, let's say, when people bought it, $5 the ounce, such as myself? And certainly I didn't buy all of my silver at $5 because it's probably your age when it started or younger. But certainly, that's quite a move, but it's years and years in the making. Whereas this last move may take place in 3 years. You might silver go from 50 to 150 in 2.5 years. So that's a 300% move in a short amount of time. So I think you're going to look back and say, my goodness, I wish I would have listened to, Gabe when he showed us that chart, or, David when he showed us the free float, or many other commentators. I'm trying to make it about the messenger. I'm trying to make it about the message. But I think the message is that we're entering a currency crisis. We're entering the end of the age of empire. The Anglo-American empire is disintegrating before our very eyes. And this is a time when you really have to be of the mindset of he who loses least wins most. Yeah. And what I mean by that, if we do go into a debt liquidating or a hyperinflationary depression, it ends in a depression. The difference between a debt liquidating depression or a hyperinflationary depression is they're both depressions. High unemployment, uncertainty in the market, a malaise over the general public feeling or mood. And in one case, the currency becomes absolutely untrusted and cannot be restarted. And in a debt liquidating depression, the currency actually regains traction and becomes valuable. It's unlikely that's what's going to happen. It's more likely we're going to have an inflationary depression. And I think as we move toward that scenario, there will be a reset in the system. It's called CBDC. I know we're going to do another interview and go through that on our next conversation. But briefly, my speech a year ago at the 50th anniversary of the gold show in New Orleans was all about the new monetary system. And it's fact-based. Every slide that I used, I took the primary information off of the BIS, the Bankers Bank, the Bank of International Settlements website, that clearly spelled out what the new monetary system is going to look like according to them. Now remember, we have all the power. The people have the power. They just don't realize it or exercise it. But just because the BIS wants it to go a certain way does not necessarily lock in the outcome, especially with people such as yourself that are willing to stand up, tell the truth, and maybe push back on the system that's not only got us, fill in the blank, but also wants to control us even further. So I'll leave it there.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to chat with you further about that because I certainly have a ton to say about it. And, David, thanks so much for coming back on the channel. And thank you all for watching. If you care to learn more about or follow David's work, be sure to check out the Morgan Report at themorganreport.com, and also a recent documentary that David put together at silversunrise.tv. They'll both be in the video description for that. And if you have any questions for myself or care to learn about the physical gold and silver markets and making a purchase there, then you can call the number that's on your screen. David, thanks again for coming back on the channel. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.